NOSFERATU.
Greetings and salutations, guys. Eric here with my review of NOSFERATU 2024 edition, Robert Eggers' remake of the 1922 German horror film, but also sort of the 20,000th adaptation of Dracula. Just to explain the backstory for those who don't know, NOSFERATU, the 1922 movie, was an unauthorized adaptation of Dracula. In fact, they got sued by Bram Stoker's estate for doing it without getting the proper legal authorization to do so. So if you watch this movie, the new one I'm saying, and you don't know that, I'm sure there's going to be people saying, wait, isn't this just the Dracula story? It is. It is its own spin on what was already a movie doing its own spin on the novel Dracula, but that's why pretty much there's correlations for all the main characters from Dracula can be found here. So you've got a story in which Thomas Hutter, played by Nicholas Hoult, travels to Transylvania to broker a real estate deal with Count Orlok, played by Bill Skarsgård, who turns out to be, well, I was going to say he's creepy, he's weird, he's mysterious. He's a vampire. He is a vampire, and there is a reason the local villagers are terrified of this guy and are warning Hutter not to go to this castle where terrible things await him. And eventually Count Orlok is going to make his way back to Hutter's home, Germany in the mid-1800s, where there is a strong connection in this story between Orlok and Hutter's wife, Ellen, played by Lily Rose Depp. This version of NOSFERATU, like other versions of Dracula have done, greatly expands on the connection between Orlok, aka Dracula, and Ellen, aka Mina, in the source material, and gives them much more of sort of this deeper connection. Here, actually, there is more of a history between them, and the fact that Ellen has this sort of psychic tie to Orlok, and what that means, and what the sort of the pull is that he has over her. I'm a big fan of Robert Eggers, and I love what he's done with The Witch and The Lighthouse and The Northman. It's funny, this is not called the NOSFERATU, kind of breaks a streak here. And just the fact that his movies are so beautiful to look at, and they're all period pieces that really not just immerse you into this history, but into a fantastical version of it. They are cinematic in the true sense. They all look great. They all are bigger than life in their own way, and that certainly goes for NOSFERATU, which has always seemed like a great fit for him, and it very much is. This is a beautiful film to look at, thanks to the work of Eggers and his regular cinematographer, Jaron Blaschke. It just has all these moments that look like they're ready to be awesome posters. There is an early shot of Nicholas Hoult at sort of a crossroads in the middle of the night, and just the use of shadow, of silhouettes. Look at this gorgeous shot right here. It all just pops off the screen, and it takes the source material, the 1922 film, and it feels like it's extrapolating and expanding on kind of what your dream version of NOSFERATU is. Because even if you don't know NOSFERATU, the original movie, you've never seen it, maybe never even heard of it, you've probably seen imagery of Count Orlok in that film and what he looked like. And there are some shots in that movie that are very iconic and have really been homaged and referenced many times by other filmmakers because of their significance in the history of film. This is Eggers' first horror film since The Witch, and it's really a world in which he shines. There's just something about the way that he can really lean into his strengths here and lean into these visuals and to the mood and atmosphere and really sort of grab a hold of you. On the performance side, this is an interesting movie because it is working on a very heightened level, and the performances reflect that. So you have this really good cast, and they are all kind of ratcheting up a notch because that's what they're being asked to do here. So you've got actors like Nicholas Hoult, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, Emma Corrin, Willem Dafoe, who are all leaning into that specific vibe, a slightly melodramatic and certainly operatic mode here. Going big is the right move in this movie. It's clearly what's called for, and they all sort of are relishing it. I will say it's funny about Dafoe, who is obviously just one of our best actors. This does feel a little bit like maybe too familiar a part for him. He is playing the Van Helsing correlation here, named Von Franz. It's actually more of a connection to Van Helsing than the original Nosferatu had. That really changed that character. It's just that we've seen Willem Dafoe has pretty much crazy professor slash mad scientist many times, very, very recently, in fact, in Poor Things. I'm not saying he's bad, by the way. Of course, he's Willem Dafoe. He's great. It just feels like maybe a different actor would have been more interesting, only because this is such a Willem Dafoe role. I'd almost like to see someone else kind of try to throw their hat in the ring in this kind of part. But the big question mark for me going into this movie was Lily Rose Depp, who I've never seen in anything prior to this. I did not see The Idol on HBO, and she was not the original choice for this role. It was supposed to be a Eggers regular, Anya Taylor-Joy, who was not available, and so I was curious about Depp. I did feel in a couple of scenes early on I wasn't sure about her, and again, I think this is a tricky role, a tricky movie, but this is a tricky role performance-wise because you're operating at this higher, heightened level. And so there's one scene where she kind of gives a speech outdoors in the middle of the day, and I wasn't quite sure if she was nailing it. It's such a tricky, specific thing that this movie is trying to go for, as far as you shouldn't be acting naturalistic. But I wasn't quite connecting to what she was doing. But actually, as the movie went on, I really did start to think she was being pretty damn great, especially portraying this pull, this connection that Orlok has to her, and how it entrances her, how it overcomes her, how she is acting sort of sick and possessed. There's almost an exorcist vibe to some of what's happening here. And I think that Depp really throws herself into that and gives a fantastic physical performance and really kind of plays this entranced and, just bewitched character as the movie goes on in a really great way, connecting to Orlok and trying to push against that, but constantly feeling like she is trapped under his spell. And then, of course, there is Nosferatu himself, aka Count Orlok, aka Count Dracula, if you really want to dig deep into the source material here, but Bill Skarsgård. And there's not much I can show you imagery-wise of him because they've been purposely holding him back from almost anything in the trailers. He doesn't get a poster like most of the other cast members, so there's just these tiny little glimpses of him revealed. Skarsgård, of course, is already well known as Pennywise the Clown in the It movies, a role he'll be reprising soon in the TV series spin-off / prequel of those films. And he was so great in that, and so transformative in that, not just the makeup they put on him, but his performance. You really could not even tell that was Bill Skarsgård if you'd seen him in other roles. And this is the same thing. This is an amazing performance here for an actor who, if he keeps going on this wavelength he's been operating at, maybe he can kind of be the modern Lon Chaney Jr. or Boris Karloff in an interesting way, playing these different creatures and under this different makeup and prosthetics, because it seems like something that he really does excel at. This version of Dracula / Orlok / Nosferatu is so sort of foreboding and just this sort of force of nature. He is presented in this very iconic way. He is sort of lording over every room he walks into. He doesn't feel of this world in all the right ways. He is shot in a really cool way as far as the shadows. We very rarely see him fully revealed. Does he look like the 1922 version? No, though you can see hints of that. There is some influence there of that. What's interesting about this is that Dracula as a character has operated on so many different levels, right? And a lot of it does connect to the vampire sort of sexiness of it all. And is Dracula an alluring, seductive character? Often, yes, absolutely, he is portrayed as that. And then you've got Nosferatu in 1922, which made him just this disgusting creature, this vile creature who would not, be debonair in any way, like we've seen some Draculas be. This version of Nosferatu, Orlok, really kind of splits the difference in a way I think is really cool, because physically he is a creature. He is, not someone who looks handsome, but he is still supposed to have this power, certainly over Ellen, that she is so drawn to him. And this movie does connect to that, sexy, alluring, seductive side of the Dracula mythos, while also portraying him as this horrific creature. And it really all works and fits with the tone of this film and what Eggers has created as far as this very dark fairy tale feeling to it all. And I'd seen some other people make that correlation, and I very much agree with it. That there is sort of a Grimm's fairy tale, gothic fairy tale feel to all of this, as far as this, story from the past, and like we're going into a storybook, albeit one with graphic gore and nudity, and certainly not meant for kids, but a lot of those old fairy tales were pretty dark themselves. And this definitely taps into that side as far as a vampire story that feels like something that is being told as a warning or as a tale from the past, a fantastical tale from the past, and giving you their spin on this ancient legend, and on this point, a character and a story that has been told so many times before. And it's hard to make feel different at this point, but I think that this one definitely has its own stamp. It's really funny watching this movie in 2024 after there's been so many very recent movies that have dipped their toes into this world from Universal, which is funny because this movie's from Focus, which is Universal's sort of art house shingle. But the fact that just last year we had Renfield, which, of course, was telling a story about a character from Dracula. Dracula was also a character in that film. This movie has the character Knock, played by Simon McBurney, who is their version of the Renfield character. And then there's the Demeter, the ill-fated ship that Dracula travels on to reach the new world, which of course was the subject of the last voyage of the Demeter last year, has its own movie, and here is a mini part of this story, as it usually is for Dracula adaptations. This isn't my favorite of Eggers' films so far. There was something about The Witch and The Lighthouse that I found even more haunting in their own ways, but I really like that all four of his movies now are so distinct and yet all still feel like they come from one man. That just this, they have this clarity of vision, they have his stamp on them, and they all look very visually different, and yet at the same time are connected by the fact that he is going all in on bringing you into these worlds that he's creating and into the eras that he's putting on film. It's really cool to see what he's doing with this. It will be a shock to the system if he ever does a contemporary movie, which I'm not saying he shouldn't do. I'd welcome it. I'd be very curious to see how he depict the modern world, given that he seems so at home in these sort of different eras and ages across his films. But yeah, Nosferatu is another cool sort of vision from Robert Eggers. I really love getting to check out his movies and sort of see where he's taking us. So those are my thoughts on Nosferatu, which here in the US is opening on Christmas Day, which I think is great. After you get through Christmas and, hopefully great times with your family, but also, there can be some stress around all of that and, making sure everything goes great. Why not decompress from it all or relax after a comforting, great time with the family on Christmas morning by going to check out a vampire movie? I can think of nothing cozier than that, but maybe that's just my sensibility. All right, guys, if you could like and subscribe, that would also be my sensibility. I'll be back with more soon. Take care.